I think the biggest concern that we had as a company for this was that customers would actually understand the value proposition at all. And because we're selling a product that's kind of halfway between the high end and the low end, so people think that frames are what you get from IKEA, or they think that that's what you get from a framing store. We were pitching something in the middle, so our biggest concern was that customers would understand that and that they would understand the benefit of buying our quality of product over what they would get at IKEA. I don't think I had any objections to doing a sprint, but some of the other stakeholders were a little bit wary of it. I think their concerns were probably that the time constraints would produce a realistic and kind of ambitious enough prototype. We had not only the time constraint of the sprint itself, but the time constraint of producing it, because we wanted to get something to market for the Christmas period. We had the 5-day sprint, and then we had only a short number of weeks to actually get it into production. So we needed to have something, we wanted to discover the big things, but produce the highest value things that we could in a short space of time. I think the biggest benefit was probably the alignment that we got across the organization. So the overall goals were understood by everyone up front, and the progress was actually quite easy to share because it was so visual. In addition to that, the obvious, getting a prototype that's tested by the end of 5 days' work is an obvious win. A bunch of the testers had no idea that they were testing a prototype. They thought it was a real thing. So I think that was a real credit to the prototyping process, and I think then that means we can test that against an actual live site with no problems. So at the moment we're collecting feedback from actual paying customers. So far the feedback has been really great. Paid advertising is really starting to take off, so now we've sold quite a lot of them in a way that is starting to become a lot more predictable. For us, we want to gather as much information as we can before we make changes. I think we worked really hard to try and address the key concerns up front, and so I'm keen to be very considered in the improvements that we make and base them off of real customer feedback.